The woman who helped take down alleged cult leader Keith Raniere is speaking publicly for the first time.
I am built to protect innocent people. I am built to help and to fight against wrongdoings, especially when people are being abused. It's one of my greatest passions. That these things made me stronger. So even though I'd be in a dark place, I always knew that I could get out of it.
I see you now, you're gorgeous, you present yourself as this stunning woman, full of wisdom, smart, very articulate as well. So how did someone like you get caught up in this world of NXIVM?
So the thing with NXIVM that sets it apart from other cults or manipulative organizations is that they preyed on people that wanted to be the best versions of themselves, high achievers, and also people that wanted to be humanitarians. So that's what made it so nefarious.
So tell us your journey with it. How did you get into it?
So for me, I had a very traumatic childhood and a very sensitive upbringing. And so there were a lot of wounds and things that I wanted to heal. And I had always been on a healing journey leading up to finding out about NXIVM. And my former best friend had a few clients that were coaches in the program. And I went to a presentation, and that's how it got started.
So for those who are not familiar with NXIVM, maybe they haven't heard of the news, maybe they've been living under a rock, because this was a big scandal, right? How would you describe it to them, which pretty much describes that part of your life?
NXIVM is the umbrella company of basically a humanitarian personal development company, and they had a lot of different courses. So it attracted people that, again, wanted to better themselves and also wanted to give back. So they had a lot of celebrities, very affluent people, and very, people that are very well educated, Harvard graduates and whatnot. And, they even had the Dalai Lama basically, promote it. Yeah, so there was a lot of allure to it, and how people really got swept in is because there was a lot of good stuff in the curriculum. So it wasn't all bad. There was a lot of things that I gained from it. There was a lot of things that I healed within that. But unfortunately, within the curriculum, there was also a lot of indoctrination. And the deeper you got, the more you got sucked in.
So at what point did you start seeing red flags? And at what point did you start questioning and maybe realizing that it wasn't what it seems?
So I started to see red flags when I moved to Albany because I was supposed to start a humanitarian business with Keith. And there were just a few things that were a little strange. For instance, whether you're a female or a male, everyone would kiss him on the lips at volleyball. It was just, I've thought to myself, am I just a little bit more closed off? Is this, a more loving space? But I found that to be a little interesting.
Right. So how did you escape?
I would say that I left. I was the first woman to leave the vow. So the vow was separate from NXIVM. The vow was a woman's only mentorship, secret society, essentially. Mm-hmm. So what pushed me to leave was a special assignment that I got from Allison Mack. A special assignment that she said would help me heal all of my issues. And the assignment was to seduce Keith and have him take a naked picture of me.
So that assignment that was given you, you did not fulfill that assignment. But how did you get away with not doing it?
So before you join, you have to submit pieces of collateral, which they say are to protect the secrecy of the group, because there's a lot of very affluent and high-profile people in there. So it was more like a bond of trust. Mm-hmm. So in order to join, after you submit that, then you're not like you just joined a sorority. You're basically as if you're on an island by yourself, and the only person you communicate with is your mentor.
So when you talk about your mentor was?
India Oxenberg.
So when you left, how did they take it?
So I didn't leave right away. It was not a very easy thing to do because they had this collateral, which really turns out to be blackmail. And so I basically turned on my ninja mode. So within that conversation and even getting that assignment, it just crushed my whole world because I am a survivor of sexual abuse. I did have a very traumatic experience and abandonment issues and a lot of things which Allison knew. Like, they all knew these things about me. So it was a very intense betrayal.
When you left, right, when you said, you know, I don't want to do this, or you left, did they try to get you to come back? And was it pleading or was it menacing?
So when I first got the assignment and I asked Allison, did Keith know about the vow? Because it was very confusing. And she said, no, he didn't know. And then I said, I don't understand, why would I do this assignment? This doesn't make any sense. And she said that if I did that assignment, it would get rid of all of my issues around being sexually abused. And so for me, automatically, that just angered me. I was infuriated because she wanted to hurt the little Jess inside of me that experienced these abuses. But at the same time, I knew she expected me to do this. I couldn't just get out, you know, without collateral damage. So that's why I said I turned on my ninja mode and basically became my own double agent and pretended to go along with things a little bit and did, like, basically plan an escape.
What was the escape like?
Well, after receiving the assignment, it was like the whole room was spinning. It's just everything that I believed had been a lie, basically. And so I had a family trip planned to go to Mexico. So luckily, I just had to keep up the charade for a short period of time. And so with that, I just, you know, I would just pretend, and she'd say, oh, how's the assignment going? Oh, it's great. I sent Keith like a heart face, and just pretending until I could get back to California, where I knew they would have less control. But, you know, the story is like a lot more complicated and complex.
Right. So it's one thing to escape, right? To stand up for yourself and to protect yourself. But it's another thing to find the strength to actually help the investigators and to actually tell your story. You were Jane Doe number 2 in this case.
Yes, so I was Jane Doe number 2 on the indictment for Keith. So he fled to Mexico, and so there were 2 Jane Does that were able to get him arrested, and I was the Jane Doe number 2 on the indictment.
What made you decide that you wanted to help the investigators and that you wanted to give your testimony, because your testimony helped indict Keith?
Well, my frame of mind during the time was just there was no other option. Like, that's just how I operate. Like, sure, could I have not helped? Could I have not given the testimony? Absolutely. But that's just not how I'm built. Like, I am built to protect innocent people. I am built to help and to fight against wrongdoings, especially when people are being abused. It's one of my greatest passions.
So here you were, you left the cult, right, to protect yourself. And then you said your piece, you gave your testimony to protect other people that could have been victims as well. But then you showed strength as well in that you came out. Like, you weren't just comfortable being Jane Doe. You wanted to come out and say there's a person and there are experiences behind this Jane Doe. What led to that decision?
Well, I always knew that I would go public with my story, and a funny thing is, even though this nexium story is huge, you know, it's been all over the news, and there's a lot of very intense elements to it, but my childhood and everything I went through was far greater than my experience in this, to be completely honest. So I truly believe that everything that I had been through prepared me to be able to be in this position, to then also be able to take it down. And so it was, of course there was intensity, and of course it was hard, and of course it was nerve-wracking, and I couldn't talk to anyone about it, and you know, I had a whole mission on my back. But at the same time, because I've gone through even more intense things in my life, I was able to navigate it in a way that I feel like only I could have done.
So everything is in the book.
Yes, I'm very excited. It's coming out this month. It's a whole story of my childhood, all of my trials and tribulations, the adversities that I've been through, how I healed from it, as well as how those things led me to be a person that got into NXIVM, but also how those traumas helped me get out of it in the way that I did. And I also offer tools and tips and ways that have helped me heal my pain and transmute it back into unconditional love.
I love that you went through so much, a lot of trauma, a lot of instances that really broke you down, right? But instead of having that victim mentality, here you are, you're fighting through every trauma. This is the warrior mentality. How did you get to that point?
No one is perfect, and I definitely had my own moments of my journey of healing and facing my shadows and, going into dark places in my life, because when you go through really intense traumas and you don't have help or support or know what to do and are not even sharing what happened, it is easy to fall into a spiral. So it was a lot of, I'd say, fortification, that these things made me stronger. So even though I'd be in a dark place, I always knew that I could get out of it, and I would push myself. I would just constantly be in a state of resilience. And so every time life would knock me down, I would cry, it would be a painful time. I'd have my moments, I'd give myself that, but then I would just keep carrying on and moving forward.
So there was trauma after trauma, and some people break down even with just one trauma, one incident, they'll go spiraling down, right? But with you kept fighting and fighting and fighting. What kept you going?
Well, I really feel like Spirit was always guiding me. I've always had a strong connection with Spirit, even though there were times I'd be resentful because of being in these positions. But I also believe that it was my inner child, and that the little Jess inside of me always still held on to love, to this inner innocence. And so because I was always connected to that, I just was always my light at the end of the tunnel.
So what do you want people to take away from your story?
What I want people to take away from my story is to remember that they have the power inside of themselves, to trust their intuition, to fight for their truth, to speak their truth, and that they matter. I think it's easy in this world to get lost and to get caught up in things that don't really matter and to be swayed, but the truth is always deep inside of yourself.
So here you are, you've healed, you're moving forward, and that's what we're taught, right? To control ourselves, control our thoughts, because we can only control really ourselves. We can't control people around us. But I'd like to get your opinion on the fact that even behind bars, Keith still has a lot of loyalists supporting him. Your thoughts on that?
Well, truthfully, I just feel very bad for them, because the reason that I believe that they still follow Keith is because they're unable to face their truth. Because if they actually gave into the reality of what they've helped promote and an evil man that they've helped do evil things, they would probably hate themselves, which is understandable. But at the end of the day, as long as you can face your truth, have forgiveness for yourself, and move forward, you can move on from that. But I think it's too much for them.
Have you forgiven them?
I've forgiven everyone in this experience. I live my life in a very spiritual way, and forgiveness is also for myself, because I'm not here to carry the burdens and the wrongdoings of those people, because that would just hold me down.
Also, your reaction to the sentencing of Allison Mack, 3 years in prison.
So I respect the judge's decision. However, it was quite disappointing. She hurt not only myself, but many other people, and you can't take back those kind of damages. People can heal from that, but that deserved a greater sentence, in my opinion. Well, I actually was at Allison's sentencing, and I actually gave my victim impact statement and looked straight into her eyes and gave her a message. I did what I was there to do. I went and did what I was meant to do, which was to say my message, because it was not only just for me, but for all the other victims and really anyone that's been victimized like this, and to stand up to your perpetrator. And unfortunately, I was hoping there would be someone inside of her, but she's a sociopath. And when I looked at her, her eyes were completely blank, and I knew she couldn't receive my message. But at the end of the day, I did my job, and that's all I needed to do.
So you wrote a book, and now you're going to promote it. You're going to be on different shows, and people will want to hear from you. Is it more painful or more helpful? Is it almost cathartic that you're talking about it over and over? Or is it like reliving the moment each time you talk about it?
Well, the thing is, when you overcome things and you actually heal from things, you're not necessarily reliving the pain or the trauma. You're beyond the story. You're beyond the incidences that happen. So I'm just more so sharing my story and sharing facts, and it's not emotionally pulling me because I've healed those wounds.
Yeah, very important. At what point did you know that you've been healed?
I think healing is a lifelong journey. There's always a deepening and a greater place of self-love that you can get to, but I do love myself. At those times, I wasn't really loving myself. Like, how could I, when having such a hard experience in a world showing me the opposite? And so through this journey, even going through the NXIVM experience, I got to realign with my connection with spirit, with myself, and develop that self-love, and the book helped a lot. And so during that process, I experienced even deeper healing. And so that's part of why I'm very excited for it to be out there in the world. Well, I have something in there. It's called the 9 steps of transmutation. And so one of the things that helped me along my path, because this has been a journey to get to where I'm at, detoxing the body. Because the thing is, we're these vessels, and if we're bogged down with bad food or drugs and things like that, we're not as clear, we're not as connected. And so your body is your temple. So when you treat your temple with love and take care of it, there's a huge difference. And you mentioned victim mentality. So I have something, it's like victim mentality versus personal responsibility. Now, it's okay to have been victimized and that be true and feel the pain of that 1,000%, but it is up to you for your own personal responsibility to heal yourself.
So I'm going to ask you about this because you're Filipina, right? Born and raised here in the States. And us Filipinos, we're very tight as a family, close-knit. So where is your family in all this? What kind of support are you getting or have you gotten from them?
Well, my sister is like my best friend, and so she's always been my greatest supporter. I actually grew up with my grandparents. I love my dad and my stepmom. She's an angel and super grateful for them. But as people will read in my story, because my childhood was not the prettiest or, a cakewalk, they'll start to see some things that happened, which my mom not being present in my life from when I was 5 because she had drug dependency issues and things like that. So luckily, my story and where I'm at now with my family is very beautiful. My dad also struggled with a lot of different issues and has come out a transformed person and is really like an angel as well. And I feel really supported for the first time in my life. I'm very grateful that I have a lot of loved ones cheering me on, because most of my life I felt very alone.
So you're talking about it now, like I can't wait to get my hands on the book. I want to read it, right? But just the way you're presenting your story, you're presenting yourself, I'm getting goosebumps because, it's very impressive the way you've handled everything, the way you've transcended all the traumas, right? But if there's one thing that people, they might forget your story, they might forget things, they will not remember everything that we've talked about today. But if there's one thing that you want them to remember about you, what would it be?
That I always came from love. I think that's the most important thing that we're missing in this world. There's so much division and so much fighting and so much external exploration that we forget about just love. Like it's it's easier to be kind than to not be kind. It feels better to give than to just take, and that's how I live my life, and that's what served me, and that's even why I decided to come forward with my name and share my story, is because if I could just help one person with it, that would make it all worth it.
That's very interesting to me, because when you talk about love, yes, we love ourselves, we love people around us, but not everyone around us are deserving of love or is deserving of love. How do you deal with that?
I do my best to stay in a place of loving all people, even evil people. Like, I still have to find this place, like when I really want to connect with spirit and see things in a bigger picture. You know, it's not easy. It doesn't mean that I necessarily like everybody. You know, that's very different. But I believe we're all born as children of God, of spirit. Every child that has been born, when you see them, they're innocent, they're sweet, they have goodness. And it's the world that creates corruption and creates sickness, and hurt people. So those are usually the people that need the most love.
Love it. I love your story. What else is on the horizon for you?
So I have a podcast that's out. We just wrapped season 1, The Untouchable Jessica Joan, and it's on all the streaming services. So there will be a season 2. I also have some talk shows that I will be on that will be coming out next month as well, and a podcast called Was I in a Cult? It's an iHeartRadio podcast, and I'm actually the pilot episode, and that's coming out September 8th. So there will be more of a deep dive on my story there, but I'm also acting and creating my own projects, and very, very excited to everything happening.
So were you in a cult?
I was in a high manipulative group that was a cult. You know, I will call it a cult because there is a cult following around that. There's just a lot of different things with that word where people have misconceptions, because a cult can be a relationship. A cult can be a relationship with your parents. It's all about manipulation and how they control people.
How do you fight manipulation? I mean, for people that are watching, how do they even know? Because you're being manipulated. You don't know, right?
Just being aware and being self-aware, and not just trusting things at face value, really taking the time and evaluating, because even if you're a good person with good intentions, does not mean that the other person that you're talking to has those same intentions, even if it seems like it.